Hello everybody, welcome to the show. Apologies for the delayed start. The reason being is that just a few minutes before I was coming in here to get set up for the show, my daughter was very, very, very spectacularly sick everywhere. So my wife and I have just spent the last sort of half an hour, 40 minutes cleaning it all up. And trying to get my daughter settled down again and try and get her back to sleep. So, yeah, it was a bit of a mess. And the whole place smells of vom. It's great. And fortunately in here now it doesn't smell of vom anymore. But it appears to have dissipated. But yeah, as soon as I leave the studio, I'm going to have to hold my breath. It's not much fun. I don't know what exactly set that off, but whatever it was, I'm hoping that she's over it now. So we'll just have to hope for the best, and we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, hopefully she's going to be okay. But that'll be her not going to school for at least a day, if not longer than that, maybe 2 days. Some schools here have a policy of 48 hours, so it's likely that she will be off for Monday and Tuesday. So that's going to keep everybody entertained. But yeah, it is what it is. So hopefully she's going to be okay. But thank you everybody for your patience and for hanging in there, because there's about 16 or so of you sitting there waiting for me to get started. I haven't even put my phone on silent, which is not a great start, so I'm going to do that right now. There we go. That's my phone put on silent, so hopefully it will not disturb the show. So there we go. So hopefully that is the end of that. So Kevin, he says, I wonder if Johnny forgot to hit the go button like I did last Tuesday. No, my daughter's been sick, so hopefully that answers your question with regards to that. So Billy, as usual, was the first one in the house because Billy is awesome, and Just Bob has the first question of the show, which we're going to get to in just a second because it's an absolute belter of a question. If you guys have got any other questions about, in like Bob's case here, a music theory question, or if you've got a Studio One question or a Notion question, then please do stick it in the chat, and I'll see what I can do about answering that tonight, because that would be cool to have more than just the one question. Now, I do understand that it is Mother's Day for you guys over in the United States, so from me to all the mothers out there in the United States, a very happy Mother's Day. I hope you are being extremely blessed by your husbands and the rest of your family. So with that all said, let's see who else is here other than Just Bob. Mike from Music to Motion is here. Paul Morgan is here. Kevin, as I've already said, is here. And Marcos Gomez is here as well. John Hawk is here. Alps Media. Rich Cresswell is here, which is fantastic. Carl Trajuziak is here. And Dwayne is here. Fantastic. Glad to see you, mate. Let's see. Tim Talks Audio is here. Tim, good to see you, my friend. I'm glad you're here. He says, good to be seen. It's been too long since I've been to any show, including my own. Tim, I miss your shows, man. I miss your live streams. I mean, sometimes they're a little late for me, but that's okay. I don't mind. You know, when you're doing a show, I like to get to your shows because they're cool and extremely informative. So if you're not subscribed to Tim's channel, go over there and do that now. I don't mind. Or you can do it at the end of the show. That would be preferable. But I don't mind if you want to go do that now before you forget. Just click on Tim Talks Audio's name in the chat there, and you should get an option to go to his channel. If you right-click it, you can keep this show open, and it will open a new tab, and then you can go to his channel, and you can subscribe, and you can hit the notification bell, and all of that stuff that will help him out a lot. So please go do that for Tim and for anyone else who you like the look of in the chat here. Don Oliver is here as well. Mike from Peace Valley Audio is here, which is awesome. I think all my mods are here, which is great. Ken Moss is here. And let's see, Cleon is here, which is great. Who else is here? Paparaptor is here as well, which is awesome. And there we go. So that's everybody. That's everybody who has said something in the chat. If you whoa, excuse me, if you'd like to be shouted out in the chat just like I did just then, say hi in the chat and I will mention you by name. I like doing that for people, and I like doing that for you guys who watch my show. So if you're new to the show, you've never seen what I do here before, hi, I'm Jonny from JonnyLipshamStudios.co.uk. And what I do is every Sunday night, 6 p.m. Central Time, although it's midnight here in Scotland, I like to answer your questions about music theory, about Studio One, about Notion, and Persona's software products in general, because that's the stuff that I know the most about. So I also do a show with Jonny Gibe on a Wednesday, same time, but not on this channel, over on the Home Studio Trainer channel, which is called Songwriting Simplified, and I do that with Jonny Gibe every Wednesday, and that's more of a songwriting kind of question and answer show. So if you are a songwriter or an aspiring songwriter, then go to that channel on Wednesday and check out our show. And if you've got a songwriting question or a music theory question or an arranging question or something to do with chords, harmony, melody, orchestration, those questions, I'll answer them here. If you've got a burning question that is uppermost in your mind, I'll answer those right now. But I love doing those with Jonny on that particular show. It's awesome, and it's one of my favorite nights of the week. So let's go and check out the pinned question at the top here. For those of you that have not used pinned questions before or pinned comments, I can pin a comment to the top of and I think my mods can do it as well. This is Bob's question. He says, what is the difference between a song in 3/4 and a song in 6/8? Both share 3 notes per bar. Actually, not quite 3 notes per bar. I can see kind of where you are confused a little bit here with your question. And also allow for 6 notes per bar. Does tempo dictate how we hear it? There are a couple of factors at play here, and it's all to do with meter and strong beats versus weak beats. That's kind of what makes the difference between 3/4 and 6/8. There's another difference. 3/4 is what we would call simple time, because it's 3 quarter notes, so it's a simple denominator. 6/8 is referred to as compound time, because the beat is divided into, or rather the bar is divided, if you were to divide a bar of 6/8 into 2 constituent parts, then you would get 2 dotted quarter notes per bar. What's a dotted quarter note? A dotted quarter note is a quarter note plus half of its own value again. So if a quarter note is worth 2/8 notes, you add another eighth note. So you get two groups of 3/8 notes, or two dotted quarter notes in the bar. And that's kind of where the meter and the pulse is felt in a bar of 6/8. In a bar of 3/4, you have 3 equal quarter notes, and each of those quarter notes is divided, as I said, into 2/8 notes. So yes, you do have 6/8 notes in both bars, or in both kind of measures of time, but the difference is to do with where the strong and weak beats are felt and perceived by the music. Some great examples of this would be, you know, a waltz. Let's get back over to the piano. So that would be kind of a fast 3/4, or you could play it much slower. So that is still a bar of 3/4. That's not 6/8, even though there were eighth notes in that second little demonstration there. It was 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, whereas 6/8, a great example of 6/8 is Queen's "We Are the Champions." Which is absolutely perfectly in 6/8. There's the pulse. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. Whereas in 3/4 it'd be 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. So it's a difference between where musical pulse and strong beats and weak beats are perceived. That's the difference between 3/4 and 6/8. So again, you could kind of go, okay, so what then is the difference between 4/4 and 2/4? Kind of similar thing is that 4/4, there are 4 quarter notes in that bar, versus 2/4 where there are 2. So in a bar of 4, the downbeat is always the strongest, and then the next strongest beat would be beat 3. So you get 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4. It's the third beat is not quite as strong. It's more like a little bit extra weight. So 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4. Whereas 2/4 would be 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. So the weight is on the 1, and so they feel very different. So I hope that has kind of dealt with that question, at least kind of just a little bit dealt with it, because it is actually, you know, time is of the essence, yes, but time is actually, when it comes to music, can be a little bit complicated, especially when you get into compound times. Like sometimes, you know, you'd say, hey, how do you do a waltz? Well, a waltz would be felt in 3/4, but a waltz can also be multi-layered. It can be 3/4, it could also be 6/8, it could also be 9/8. And again, it depends upon the phrasing of the melody, and it depends upon where those strong and weak beats are. So although the answer is 3/4 is simple time, 6/8 is compound time, there are nuances and subtleties that kind of may suggest one versus the other. That sounded like my daughter being sick again. That's not good. So yeah, that's kind of the answer to that question. And there are some resources out there that you can check out, which I'm going to link to in the chat here. which will help you out with the answer to this question. And there are some examples, some musical examples in that. There's Shostakovich's Second Waltz from his Jazz Suite, which is very definitely a 3/4. And then there's the scherzo from the minuet of one of Mozart's symphonies. Then there's Raindrops on Roses and Whiskers on Kittens from My Favorite Things. That's another 3/4. And then there's My Delilah, the Tom Jones hit, is another 3/4. And then examples of 6/8 would be We Are the Champions, which I kind of mentioned, and Plaisir d'amour for those of you that like classical French songs. Let's see, and of course Pop Goes the Weasel is another 6/8. So there's a few examples that I could think of, and also that's referenced in this article as well. Well worth checking out. I've seen Blackbird by the Beatles listed as both 3/4 and 6/8. Very interesting. Seems like learning to write in both would be the best way to learn the difference. Yeah, absolutely. Practical learning by doing is a really, really good approach. You know, it's like, how do you learn to build a table? Well, you start by building a small little kid's table rather than a massive, great big dinner table. And because everything is smaller, it's a bit more manageable. So you watch maybe some tutorial videos, you see somebody build a table, and then the best way to go and figure it all out is to do it yourself. Having watched some videos, having talked to people who are into carpentry, then the next best thing to do is actually build your table and give it a go and see what happens. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is it falls over. It doesn't stand up. Or as soon as you put a plate on it, it falls over. Or as soon as you sit down at the table, it falls over. But then what happens? You pick up all the pieces and you look at why it fell over. And you go, aha, I needed to do this and this. So then the next table you try, you learn. You apply what you learned from the failure. And then, hopefully, you build a much more sturdy table. And then having mastered these small tables, and you can build one of these small tables at will, having done it a few times, then you start thinking about, hey, maybe I can start building bigger tables. So it is with music and music theory. You start with something small, something simple, like the difference between compound and simple time. And then you work on to much more complex things, like maybe why 17/8 sounds cool versus 16/8, or why 17/16 sounds even cooler than 16/16, which would be a bar of 4/4. So 17/16 is a bar of 4/4 plus a 16th note, and it does sound incredibly cool. I've played pieces of music that do that, and it messes with your head when you've never done something like that before. But the more you do it, the more you understand it, the more you work out how it works, and then it becomes second nature. And you can play in 17/16 without really thinking about it, which makes it, of course, easier to play music and to make music sound musical in 17/16 rather than you're playing a bar of 4 and adding a 16th note to it kind of awkwardly, which is kind of where you are at first. At first, that's exactly what it's like. You're playing a bar of 4/4 and adding a 16th note to it, and it feels exactly like that at first because you are not used to it. But then, eventually, the more you do it, the more it becomes natural, and then you start to relax, and you don't even think about the subdivisions anymore. It becomes natural. And playing in 17/16 is eventually almost becomes easier than playing in 4/4. So, you know, and you can take that kind of concept and you can apply it to anything, you know, from learning simple triadic harmony, you know, with three voices, you know, root position, First inversion, second inversion. Great! Now I can play triads in any key. Yay! Fantastic! That's a C major triad and a D major triad. Great! Now I can start expanding out, and I can start thinking about major sevenths, minor sevenths, half diminished sevenths. And those become quite natural, and they start sounding natural. And then you start thinking about, well, you know what? What about notes above the octave? And that's when you start getting into jazz harmony or extended harmony, which you can apply to any style of music. Jazz harmony isn't just for jazz, by the way. You can use 13 flat 9 sharp 11 chords in any genre of music you want. I've heard it played in flipping death metal. And it surprised me. It took me totally by surprise. This guy that I've been working with, I've never mixed metal music ever. I have no idea. I don't know where to start. But this guy sent me his song, and there was this A flat 13 flat 9 sharp 11 chord right there in the middle of this song, and I was just like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. It totally took me by surprise, and I ended up looping this section of music, and it just sounded so freaking cool. And the fact that he used this chord once in the entire song made that chord just extra perfect. And then, of course, I had a whole bunch of reference tracks so I could learn how to mix metal, and he liked the mix. It took us a few revisions to get there because I'm not that familiar with the style, not that familiar with how much compression you need to use, because I work in mostly jazz and mostly acoustic music. You don't need a whole lot of compression for those styles of music, whereas in metal music you need a lot. I was not expecting to need quite so much, but a few revisions later we got there, and he liked what I did with it. So and I said to him, hey, that A flat 13 sharp 11 flat 9 chord sounds great. And he goes, yeah, I'm glad you dig it. I'm glad you noticed it. And so we had a bit of a rapport. It was great. I will probably work with him again, which is cool. Let's see. I've seen Blackbird, yada, yada, yada. Blackbird changes time signature all over the place, though. Yeah, it does. It's one of those things, it's one of those tunes where it has multiple changes of time signature. And there's a few songs by the Beatles that do that. Andrew Lamb is here. He says, good morning. It is morning in Australia. Yes, you are very much in the future. I thought I was in the future, but Australians definitely are, because you guys have already started your working week. I feel immensely sorry for you already, because it is Monday morning for you. Just Bob says, can I play it on my keyboard? What, Blackbird? No, unfortunately I can't, because I will get a copyright strike if I do. So I'm very sorry. I cannot play copyrighted music, especially music by the Beatles. If I play music by the Beatles, they will hit this show instantly, and the show may even get completely taken down. It's not just that I'll get a copyright strike, they will take the show down, and I don't want that to happen, so sorry about that. I can't do that. But oh, the A flat 13. Yeah, I can play A flat 13. So here's A. Let's move over. Hang on. Let's move the old mic over this way a bit. Clonk. Sorry about that. There's A flat. There's a 7. There's a third. There's a 13. Now, I was talking about adding a sharp 11 and a flat 9 to this. So you can put the flat 9 on the top, like this. And then you can put, you can, if you want, you can put the sharp 11 on the top. So you get this nice wide open voicing, which sounds really, really cool. Great for orchestrating across like a big band, for example. And it's essentially a D minor triad on top of an A flat 7 chord. Yeah, there's the D minor triad, there's the 7, there's the A flat aspect of it. Or you could say it's A flat 7 with a D minor triad on the top of it. So there's your A flat 7. There's your D minor. Or you can do it close voiced. So you could go root 7, flat 9, 3rd, sharp 11, 13. Which kind of sounds a little darker. But again, there's your D minor triad with your A flat 7 underneath it. And where's that going to resolve? That's going to resolve to D flat major 7. So it's a nice little, it's a nice chord. But there's another way to play it. Let's see. Think about this. So, so if I was to play an F major triad, and then put my A flat 7 underneath it, I'd get my 13 flat 9. And then just put my D to make that a D minor chord on the top. And you get a different voicing. So if I was to put that in a more musical context, so there you go. A flat 13, sharp 11, flat 9. You can use it in any style of music. I've heard it in Bartok. I've heard it in Shostakovich. I've heard it in Debussy. I've heard it in Ravel. I have heard it in all sorts of classical composers where you least expect to hear it. I've even heard 13th chords in Mozart. One of Mozart's little tricks is when he does a 2-5-1, he will do this. He'll do like this that kind of descending Three Blind Mice melody kind of thing. He'll go. So there's your 13th chord right there. And so, you know, even Mozart did that. And that was definitely not prevalent harmony until the later end of Beethoven's compositional period, when he started introducing some seriously weird stuff like canons and, you know, extending the brass section to include, you know, double flipping tubas and all sorts, because he had lost his hearing and was starting to go a little bit insane. And he started experimenting with more chromatic harmony, and so he started using 13th chords. Ronald Figura is here. He says, I like coming on Sundays for jazz lessons. Yeah, I don't always do jazz, but when I do it a lot. Andrew Lamb says jazz club. Nice. Yes, indeed. Tim says chords are all about where you came from, where you are, and where you want to go, right? Yes, absolutely. And also, sometimes they are about how you can interrupt yourself. For example, going back to that 2-5-1, let's see, in D, Now, you'd expect me to go back to chord 1, right? But what if I did this? Went to B minor instead. That would be what we would call an interrupted cadence, because 5-1 is a perfect cadence. 4-1, your church cadence is a plagal cadence. So 5 to 6 is an interrupted cadence. 5 to let me think about this. 5 to flat 6 to 6 is an interrupted cadence with a little passing chord. One of my favorite little progressions. And the cool thing is, I can reharmonize that 3 blind mice. Instead of going I can go and you get just exactly the same effect, except it's just a little bit more melancholic, and you've interrupted the cadence, and you're going potentially off into a completely different key, or it's just a kind of a little, let's just pause here for a second, and then we'll restate the last line. So it can be for emphasis. And also, chords can be used just for their own sake, which is kind of what we were talking about on Wednesday night's show, over on Jonny's channel, when we were talking about non-functional harmony. For those of you that were there on Wednesday night, that's what we talked about. So if you missed Wednesday's show, go on to the Home Studio Trainers channel and you can catch the replay of that. It was really, really, really a cool show, and it was a lot of fun to do, and I gave away to you guys totally for free some of my best information when it comes to harmony and how to use chords. So sometimes chords don't have to function. They don't even have to go anywhere. They can be completely unrelated to each other. It's entirely up to you, the composer, as to what your methodology is. But what I always say to people, and I say this to my own composition students, which I still have, some of them I have had since they were grad students, and some when they were undergrads, and they're still students of mine. And the question I am always asking them is, why have you done that? Why have you written that? Why have you written that melody? Why have you used that passing chord? Why have you done X? Why have you done Y? What's with the timpani roll there? Why have you doubled the flutes with the glockenspiel at that point? So, I'm always asking my composition students why. Because the biggest thing as musicians, as songwriters, as composers, as arrangers, that we need to be able to do is to be able to justify the choices that we make, even if we're just improvising, even if we are just, we're just playing on some blues changes, or we're playing on the changes to I Got Rhythm, or we're playing over the changes to How High the Moon, or we're playing on changes to any other popular song. You need to be able to justify your choices. Why have you done that? So that the listener can understand what you're trying to communicate and the essence of what you're trying to communicate. So being able to justify your choices and the musical decisions that you make is really important. And it'll help you more critically think about how you write music. So, yeah, I hope that answers all of that, really. We got any more questions, guys? You guys are talking about Hammond organs, which is cool. I like Hammond organs. I have played an actual real B3 Hammond. I don't have one here because it would not fit in this room. But I do have a kind of copy of one, which I think sounds pretty cool. That's always fun to play. Just Bob says, our very own Marcos Gomez does mixing and mastering. Is it okay if I post his SoundCloud page for people to look at and contact him? Absolutely, yeah, go for it. Go for it. Please do post his link. This show really isn't an advertising place, but I will make an exception in this particular case. So we got about 20 people here, which is pretty cool. Not bad considering it is Mother's Day over there in the United States. In fact, we got 21 people here, which is cool. I wasn't expecting quite that many. Ronald Figueroa says C3 and 31H in my living room. Wow, you lucky person. I wish I had that much space. The only thing that I'm allowed to have in the lounge is my Fender Rhodes Mark V. The Mark II is at my mum and dad's house now. And then the only other kind of electric piano option I've got is this guy here. But yeah, the Fender Rhodes is downstairs because I like to play it downstairs. Are you aware of any controllers that function like bass pedals on an organ? Yes, there are some really, really good ones. I believe Clavier, the people that make the Nord, I believe they have a set of bass pedals. And I believe Yamaha do a set of bass pedals as well. And they connect just through MIDI through or by USB, but I think mostly through MIDI through. But yes, Nord do because, or at least they used to. When I got this guy here, they had a 2-manual Nord organ with pedals as well, which was about £7,000, and I did try to persuade my wife to let me buy it, but she said this will do. She said, does that do organ sounds? I said yes, and she goes, well, there you go. Right, Ken says, I know a lot of theory, but I have written some things that I can't explain why that chord progression works, but it's almost as if that's exactly what the song needed to be, and I was just a vessel. You have justified the use of that chord. If it's exactly what the song needs, if it helps serve the lyric, and if it helps support the melody, it has function. And it's there. It's there for a purpose. But, harmony doesn't always have to have a particular musical function necessarily, as discussed last week. But if you're working in popular music, and I mean that in the broadest sense of the word, so anything from the 1920s through to the 2020s, the last century of popular music styles, then harmony is going to be functional. It's not very common to have non-functional harmony in popular song. That's not to say it doesn't happen, because it does. There are things like tritonal substitutions where you take a chord a tritone away to substitute for a dominant 7th chord. That's a whole nother topic on its own, and there are vast numbers of books that have been written on tritonal substitutions and how they work. But that's just one example, and that, that's taking a chord from a different key that doesn't belong in the key that you're working in, but it is functional. It's serving a purpose. But yeah, if you want to get into non-functional harmony and how you might be able to apply that to, popular song, then that is a challenge, but it's worth doing. Rich says, Nord would seem a good bet as they are usually built like tanks. Yes, exactly. I've had this since 2006 and it has never failed me once. There is only one thing wrong with this. That key doesn't work. All the other ones do, but that one doesn't. I don't know why. but I have tried resetting the whole thing back to factory default and all of that. So I've tried various different options, and it still doesn't work. So I think it's possible that the sensor for that note just no longer works. Don't know why. But other than that, it is built like a tank, and you can literally put it in a bag, put it in a gig bag, and you can just chuck it in the back of a truck and go off to a gig, and it will take all of that being thrown about without a problem. They are extremely robust instruments, but they are also extremely expensive because the samples are phenomenal quality. Phenomenal quality. They have not left anything out. These are multi-layered, multi-level samples of real, actual instruments. I think they might even be physical models rather than samples. I can't quite remember which it is. But they are the sounds of real, actual instruments. They're, there's nothing made up on these things. But yeah, they are built like tanks. But yeah, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, which is a little disappointing because we've basically only had the one question tonight. Little bit sad. But I'm going to go back up the chat and just kind of make a check. Because we had Bob's really great time signature question, which is brilliant, by the way. We talked a little bit about A flat 13. But it looks like that's it, guys. I can't see any more questions. And I started the show late, so I'm prepared to run a little bit late if you guys have got questions. Otherwise, we'll just kind of call it a night. I'm happy to do whatever you guys want to do. Because this show belongs to you guys. This is your show. Anybody got any Studio One questions or Notion questions or anything like that? Tim says there's a reason the Nords are stage key standards. Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more with that. I'm very, very glad of my purchase of this, and the company that make them is called Clavier, and they are Swiss-based. They are based in Switzerland, and they are really, really nice people. I have emailed them a few times. I've talked to their tech support guys a few times, and they are really, really terrific people. And this is one of the earlier Revision B models of the original Nord stage piano. And of course, now there's the stage piano, what is it, 4 or 5 that I think is out just now, which I would love to get my hands on. But yeah, they're not exactly cheap, shall we say. I would have to be gigging again with a big band, I think, to be able to justify one. Paul Morgan asks, do octaves really make much a difference to a melody? They can make a massive difference. I mean, just think about the melody to Somewhere Over the Rainbow, for example, which again I'm not going to be able to play because of copyright reasons. But if you think about that melody, it features some wide interval leaps. I'm just going to play that first bit. That is an octave leap. And it actually serves the lyrics of the music. Somewhere over the rainbow. It's looking up. It's aspirational. It's lifting your eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? It has that kind of a vibe to it. So if the melody is kind of talking about somewhere over the rainbow, where are rainbows? Rainbows are in the sky. We're looking over the rainbow. Makes sense to have an octave leap, right? And then this melody gradually descends, but it still has a leap. It doesn't have that octave leap anymore. That leap gets smaller. It becomes a major sixth. But the melody gradually works its way downwards from that initial octave leap. And for those that are interested, I have covered this in the melody writing part of my music theory. I think it's my music theory course. Or is it my songwriting course? And I've not put my songwriting course up yet. I need to do that. Songwriting course will go up on the channel, by the way. The music theory course is already up. The songwriting course will go up this week. I just haven't got round to re-editing the videos, but I will do that. And yeah, there's lots of talk about melody writing there, and I do use the Somewhere Over the Rainbow as a great example of not only economy in melody writing, but also, you know, making a good use of wide intervallic leaps. So an octave, a major sixth, and other wide intervals. Wide interval leaps are really cool, useful little devices, actually, because they provide interest to your melody. But it's not just that interest in the melody. I mean, that's kind of the melody arc of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. But it features that little leap every time. And it's so it as the melody descends, it keeps kind of having aspiration. It's always kind of, as it's descending, it's always looking up a little bit, always looking up a bit. It's always an ever hopeful melody, even when it starts to descend. And then you get this little, you know, you get the where is it? In the middle section of the song, where you get this major third thing going on, minor third, and then a tone, and then ending on the sixth of the chord, which is a weird place to end, but you know, normally a melodic phrase, certainly of the time period that it was written in, the phrase would normally end on the five, not on the sixth of the chord, but it kind of it works because it kind of creates this lingering effect, which is very, very useful. So yeah, octaves, wide interval leaps are great little melodic devices that I think everybody should make use of, because they provide interest to your melody, and it gets you away from kind of like stepwise melody, which is fine, but stepwise melody just gets, you know, it gets a little bit boring after a while. Do something with it, you know, have a leap in there. Let's see, that was a good question though. So are there specific chords, says Ronald, that are used in an interrupted cadence? Yes. Going from chord 5 to any other chord but 1 is an interrupted cadence. So if I went from chord 5 in the key of C to B flat, that would be an interrupted cadence, because I'm expecting, especially if I put a 2 before it, that's not what you're expecting. You're expecting, and instead I'm giving you or it's still an interrupted cadence. It's basically going from 5 to anything else except for 1. That is what makes an interrupted cadence. Paul says, do you find bass lines you come up with on keyboards differ from those you come up with on the bass guitar? Actually, I don't, generally speaking. Because if I come up with something on the keyboard, I know at some point I'm going to have to play it on the bass. So I tend, because I am a bass player, I tend to think bass lines like a bass player. So, you know, they're kind of easily transferable between the two instruments. I guess if I was not a bass player and I was just a keyboard player, maybe I would think about bass lines in a different way. But I think the fact that I am both a keyboard player and a bass player means that I think about bass parts and bass lines from a bass player's perspective, I guess. Not necessarily the most clear answer I've ever given. Rich Cresswell says, how would you go about combining instruments in a piece that are quite similar to each other? Would you have them interchange? Limited characters in the chat. Okay, so you're thinking like maybe woodwind instruments, like flutes and clarinets, for example. They have a different color, they have a different character, but they are both woodwind instruments, and actually they go together really well. Flutes and clarinets go together beautifully. They sound lovely, especially when you maybe voice them in thirds or fourths or fifths. They sound gorgeous. But if you've got lots of these things kind of going on, then yeah, you might want to kind of interchange them. So maybe have flutes play a part, then maybe have some call and response going on. The flutes state a phrase, the clarinets answer it with a different phrase, and so on and so forth. That way you're keeping them out of the way of each other from an arranging point of view and an orchestration point of view, so you're not having to do it in the mix or via automation after the fact, which would be incredibly laborious, a pain in the arse, and no fun whatsoever. You don't want to have to be automating those kind of elements. You can enhance those kind of things via automation, but those things need to exist in the arrangement first. So if you've got a melody in the flutes that you want to bring forward, you can do that via automation. And then if you want the response from the clarinets plus another counter melody by some muted trumpets, for example, then you can do those via automation, providing they are already kind of made space for in the arrangement to start with. I hope that kind of answers that. Yeah, you want to kind of avoid having to do lots and lots of EQ moves if you can, for writing instrumental music. You want to kind of try and deal with some of those problems by how you arrange and how you orchestrate to get things out of the way of each other and make some space, would be my view on that. Marcos says, what's your opinion about after treating the studio leading with vibrations? Did you already test the place? I'm not sure I understand your question. That might be kind of maybe a limitation. Maybe there's a little bit of a language barrier thing going on there. But I'm the gist I think of what you're getting at is, did I test the room with one of those room microphones that you can get that will kind of measure the the frequencies of the room? No, I didn't. I didn't do that. But I know enough about the basics and maybe some intermediate stuff about acoustics to know where I needed to put some acoustic treatment. Now, granted, this room is not amazingly treated. There are reasons for that. I've just put up some very lightweight foam on the walls at the moment, which some people scoff at and some people say, oh, those aren't doing anything. That kind of thin, couple of inch thick pieces of foam, they don't do anything. Well, they do. They might not deal with much of the low end or much of the low mids particularly, but they do something. They do, help reduce certain flutter echoes that occur in rooms that are primarily drywall. This is a new build house. So this house was finished at the end of June last year, and we moved in the first week of July. So part of the problem is that it takes the house a little while for it to settle. And I want to not have lots of big cracks along the walls. So to avoid that, I decided I was only going to put up to start with the bare necessities of acoustic treatment that will kind of tame some of the issues in the room. Not completely control them, but tame them. And then once the house is settled, give it, a year, 18 months, maybe 2 years, then I'll go to town and I'll start putting up some nice, 3-4 inch thick broadband panels on the walls, and the room will sound glorious. At the moment, it sounds okay, and I can live with it. I know where the trouble spots are. I know how this room sounds. I've been in it for almost a year. I know how it sounds. I know its weaknesses. I know its strengths. I know how to compensate for them when I'm mixing. But no, it's not ideal. Because it's ultimately a bedroom. It's not designed to be a studio. It's a bedroom. And so because of that, it's going to have some inherent inbuilt issues, some of which you just cannot get past. There are going to be some problems with a room like this that you can't get past. Number one being the amount of bass that can build up in a room like this. Particularly if you have huge speakers. If you have big, really loud speakers, bear in mind that a 40 hertz sine wave is going to be 28 feet long before it runs out of energy. Most people's rooms are not 28 feet long, which means the bass coming from the speakers is going to go to the back of the wall and it's going to bounce back into the room. And that's going to create, some frequency cancellation at certain low frequencies, which means there are going to be points in the room where there is just no bass, and there are going to be points in the room where there is a tremendous amount of bass because that bass has come back and is building up. And you get a standing wave of certain low frequencies. You can bass trap. That is a good thing to be able to do, for sure, because that will help tame some of that. But a room this size, which is essentially 11.5 long and 8.5 wide, it's not ideal. Especially for bass. So, and at the moment I don't have particularly robust bass traps, but like I said, I'm once the house is settled and all the walls and the wall panels are all kind of settled in and everything else, then yeah, I'm going to put some thicker bass traps in all of the corners to kind of combat some of the low frequencies. Let's see. I was fishing for alternative ideas. Yeah, I knew you were, Rich. I know. You know your stuff. I know. Carlos P is here. He says, what about Dolby Atmos? What about Dolby Atmos? Give me a little bit more information. What about it? Dolby Atmos is pretty cool. It does some pretty cool things. It's great if you are working with specifically in film for cinema, or you are working specifically with music or sound design that is designed for, headphones or speaker systems that are built for Dolby Atmos. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot of point to it. But yeah. Ambient delay of the room is because acoustics lead with isolation and treatment, but vibrations also are there about floor, for example, tiny aspects like 7 hertz influence. Ambient delay, kind of like flutter echoes and that kind of thing. I don't really, they're here, they're present. But with the acoustic treatment that I have, that's a little bit out of shot on both sides of the room, that you can't really see because of where the camera's positioned. They actually, they're only thin pieces of material, but they actually do deal with those particular frequencies, especially things like 7 hertz. Let's see. Bob says frequencies travel at different speeds. The trick is trying to find them. Yes, they do. They all have different wavelengths. the lower the pitch, the longer the wavelength. Pretty much is your standard rule, really. Would you install it in your kind of room? Oh, okay, Carlos, I got you. Would I install Dolby Atmos in this room? If I was mixing for it and I knew that that's kind of where the bulk of my income was coming from for mixing for Dolby Atmos, yeah, sure. I would install a Dolby Atmos system into this room. If I knew I was going to be working almost exclusively in that system, then yes, I would definitely install a Dolby Atmos system. But otherwise, no, I'm not going to do it. And, you know, yes, I do write music for film. But, you know, I don't have anything to do with Dolby Atmos when I'm doing that. I just compose the music and I mix it and I master it and I return it to whomever the filmmakers are for their work after that. But yeah, other than that, no, I would not install Dolby Atmos in my room. So there you go. Okay, it is 1:15 in the morning here in Gorebridge in Scotland, the capital of the world. So with that, I'm going to end tonight's show here. Thanks very much, everybody, for coming, and thank you also for your awesome questions. And again, thanks for your patience with the delay to getting the show started. Yeah, Rich, absolutely. I could not agree more with that. If you can't afford, you know, a good high standard room kit to treat a room, like for example one of the GIK acoustics room kits, if you can't afford that kind of stuff, which is expensive, then definitely furniture, bookshelves with lots of thick books on them will do your room the world of good. You guys may remember, actually, in the Craigen Park studio, I had a chest of drawers at the back of the room, and that chest of drawers was filled with all sorts of stuff, and that absorbed a lot of low end. In fact, it pretty much dealt with all the low end in that tiny little room, and as soon as I moved that out, it made a huge, you know, just like the bass just completely overwhelmed in that room. For the, you know, the last little period that we're in there. But for sure. Paul says, great shows ever. Thank you so much for teaching us. I, for one, are always learning every week. Well, that's great. And I'm very, very glad you're enjoying it. And I hope everybody is enjoying my Sunday Night Lives. If you are, then please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell and select all notifications. That way you'll get notifications of this show and also any videos that I put out. If you have a topic for a video or a broad question that you would like answered in a video, for example, you want me to look at something in specific in Studio One, drop me an email, go to the website down there. See it down there? Go to that email, go to that website there. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there is a contact form that you can fill out there. And just send me an email and say, hey, I would like a video on X subject. And I will add it to my list and I will start making those videos. The Note Effects series that I am just finishing up, by the way, was one of those questions. Somebody said, hey, I would love it if there were some videos on the Note Effects. And I was just like, sure. So I made a whole series of videos on the Note Effects. So if you want to see stuff like that, then just drop me an email and let me know what it is you would like to see, and I will make it happen. Likewise, if you have a subject for the show, for Sunday Night Lives, just like Bob had, he had a great question that kind of kicked off the show, then please do, again, drop me an email and let me know, and I will kick off the show with your question first. So please do email me. Facebook messages work as well if you'd rather do that rather than email. And I'll be glad to hear from you for sure. Otherwise, I will see you guys all on Wednesday over on the Home Studio Trainer channel for Songwriting Simplified. Get your songwriting questions in over there, and it should be a lot of fun. All right, folks, have a great week, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Good night.